afternoon, everybody. This is Rob Seaver, Executive Director with Leads Counselor, bringing you this week's webinar in our leadership series. I'm excited, as I always am, about this one, but this one in particular is from a board member company, Convoso, that I actually go over to on a regular basis, and I know this company well. I love this company, and I'm super excited about it. Today's webinar, as you guys should know because you signed up for it, it is the 2.0 call center. I got that right. Kyle down at the bottom, he helped me with that, and so I'm super excited that I got through it. I want to go through a little bit of housekeeping before we actually get started here. Our panelists have agreed to answer questions along the way. I'm sure you'll have them. In your control panel, there should be a chat window. There also should be a questions window. If you don't have the questions, please use the chat, ask me specifically, or use the questions window and ask the questions. Along the way, I'll feed them to the panelists, and we will try to get to them. If we don't get to them, we will get to them afterwards and answer them. I don't want to stop any longer and keep you waiting, and so I'm going to introduce today's esteemed panel. And I'm going to start with our host company, Convoso, the CEO and co-founder, my friend, somebody that I absolutely love in this space and have enjoyed understanding more about his company, Nima Hakimi. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Rob. I'm definitely super excited to be on the webinar today with everyone. Been in the lead gen space for about 14 years now. In that period of time, I've seen a lot. We brought on at least, I would say, 1,000 lead gen call centers in that period of time. And, so I'm super excited to talk about today's topic in terms of how the pandemic has forced call centers to work in a way that they haven't worked before, in terms of how things change when you're working from home. And super excited for both Kyle and Mike to share their experience because they have gone remote way before the pandemic had hit.
Well, thank you very much. We are going to get into much more about this, the 2.0 call center. I know I messed that up, but I want to move this now over to our next guest, Kyle Anderson. And I'm going to read this. As you guys know, I can't read anything. He is the Director of Operations at Digital Marketing. No, I'm sorry. I told you I was going to mess it up. Digital Market Media. Kyle Anderson, thank you for joining us today. And tell us a little bit about what you do there and a little bit about your company.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Excited to talk about. I think we were saying last week, me and Michael could talk about this for hours, so we'll try to keep it short here. But yeah, digital market media. We're primarily in the insurance marketing space. We do a lot in pay-per-call and lead generation, so really helping connect brands with high-intent consumers. And my role at Digital Market Media in operations is overseeing basically the processes and efficiencies and analytics that kind of make our whole company, the wheels turn there. So that's primarily my focus there.
Awesome. Mike, I saved the best for last, and I can't thank you enough for joining us. Mike Velarde, you are the Senior Vice President and you are the Dialer Manager, I think is what you said, of Resource Marketing Corp. I hope I got all that right. Mike, thank you. Tell us a little bit about what Resource Marketing Corp is like and what you guys do and then what you do for your role.
We're an outbound call center, so we focus on introducing consumers to solar. So we contact consumers who have either shared some information recently online or gathered some information, requested either a future callback. We facilitate that callback. We're a company under where we call them and contact them and then put them into an introduction with a partner through a live transfer. So we use Convoso, which is a very successful platform. We're very excited to be here today.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for joining us, all three of you. I'm going to quickly get into this. Nima and I were on the stage in Denver, Colorado back in January when the world used to travel to shows, and we were talking about this very same topic, very differently in some respects and very, very similarly in other respects. And I remember we did it on the 3 efficiencies of the call center. We were talking about the agent efficiency, the lead efficiency, the management efficiency, and it was super exciting for me to get up and learn about a world of call center that I'm not real familiar with. In my role of executive director, I deal with a lot of things compliance and regulatory, certainly understand TCPA and all of the telemarketing laws that are out there on the books, but I've never sat in a call center. I've never been experienced in what was going on. And one of the things that stuck out is that the way that call centers used to do business, and in many ways, the ways that call centers are currently doing business is very archaic. There's a better way of doing it. It takes technology, it takes understanding, it takes effective leadership, effective management of the process, a lot of these things that have to go together to actually bring an experience in today's 2.0 call center, which is where the industry really needs to go. So Nima, you know, going back to that conversation on the stage in Denver, as we talked about this, one of the things that you talked about, which I thought was important to kick this off, is how has the call center operated up to this point? What's the traditional? Obviously, we have people who run exclusively remote and have been doing it, but we found out when COVID hit that this was actually something that was super important for those companies that had call centers that had to immediately move. And why is that important as it relates to how call centers used to do business, and some still are?
Yeah, no, good point. So traditionally, you know, what we've seen with many call centers is that you would just get a lot of leads. Things used to be easy, right? Regulations, there wasn't a lot of regulation in place, but things have changed with the TCPA. The consumers are fed up. But call centers would just pound their leads to death, call them 100 times over and over and over. And so that model worked for a while, but it no longer works. So when we look at these efficiencies of lead efficiency, agent efficiency, manager efficiency, it's really the combination of all three of them that you got to do that will make your call center more profitable and in a compliant manner. You know, because especially now, if you want to go remote, if you don't have those processes in place across all three efficiencies, it won't work. There are a lot of variables. If you go work from home, the agent's computer, right? That's if they don't have a good computer, that can mess with the call quality, the internet connection. There could be distractions. You know, if they're, you know, they have kids at home, so that could, you know, change things around. And if you're not available on the dialer in an available mode, now you may not be getting those calls. What happens with payroll, right? How are you paying the agents if they're not really logged in to take calls? So this pandemic has really forced, I want to say, call centers to look at the metrics, the numbers, the data. You really have to look at all the pieces of that, of your call center in order to optimize it and manage it in a profitable manner. You're on mute.
It actually points out on my screen that I'm an idiot and have it on mute, so I should be able to pay attention to that more. Well, guys, I did say that somebody on this call would do that, and it just happened to be me. So one of the things that really hit me when you were talking about the way that call centers used to do business was they would just beat the hell out of the number. They would just call and call and call and call. And so it forces us today, especially from a council perspective, it really hit home, because as we try to work at protecting the consumer, bringing a better experience to the consumer, we no longer can just beat them up and dial and dial and dial into the answer, or we give up on them, right? Is that what you're saying? Is that was the old way of doing it?
Yeah, I mean, look, your caller IDs are getting flagged now as scam likely, right? That will decrease your contact rates. Calling it excessively is just a recipe for disaster. You need to look, like I said, at the data and figure out at what point it makes sense to stop calling and maybe at some point resume again. But don't just bombard the consumer, because at the end of the day, you want to provide a good experience for them and do it in a way where you still get the result that you want, but you don't need to pound the data to death and keep calling your data or leads. There are better ways, and Mike and Kyle both do an excellent job of, you know, working their leads that way.
You know, Kyle, I'm going to turn the conversation to you, and Mike also. I get to this because it hit me when we were on our pre-call and talking about this. I have been in such a COVID mode for so long that I'm listening to a lot of the companies that I work directly with who have call centers, and they were left to scramble. Nima talked about it very briefly in his opening there, and what hit me was like, oh, these guys have always been remote, or have been remote for a long time. Kyle, you've been remote forever, is that right? Or for as long as you remember?
Yeah, as long as we've had a call center, we've been remote.
So what struck me about that, and this is one of the things that I think that really hit me, was I remember when people were talking about when COVID hit and they had to transition from call center to remote operations, there was a lot of provisioning of equipment and a lot of things that happened, onboarding, things of that nature. You and I talked about this on the previous call, and what was interesting is you guys already have an ecosystem that has the checks and balances. Can you, and Mike, I'm also going to get to you to get your pitch on this. I think a lot will be overlapped, but can you help me understand, like for those people who have been remote, those people who rely on their call center agent to actually have their own equipment, help me understand what that's like, because I found it fascinating to listen to that, some of the challenges and the things that you're facing, especially even during COVID.
Yeah, you're right. And we've definitely learned this as we've gone through, different hiring phases. But one of the most important things for us is making sure and checking all of the agent's equipment, like almost during recruiting process, like during the interview process. After the screener, the next thing we do is we have them, send in their internet speed, their processor on their computer, what system they have, if they have a headset. Because what this does is, I think you said it earlier, like their internet is pretty unpredictable. You're not under one roof. Everyone has a different computer, laptop. So by making sure that they have the correct systems in place prior to, like, say, day one of training, it just helps the efficiency, tenfold. Not having the trainer and the supervisors needing to take time every 30 minutes to deal with tech issues. It's more focused on, training in the remote environment. So definitely having that kind of pre-flight checklist of everything that they need to have system-wise before they're on is hugely important.
Mike, one of the questions, and thank you, Kyle, for that. One of the questions that during this transition of COVID that came up a lot was, how do we onboard, and those are those questions of people who have traditionally been able to meet in person and see and talk to and interview. But you're a little unique because I think, if I understand this right, or remember, you were there when it was an in-house call center, or at least your experience with that with your company. You were in-house and then you moved to completely remote. How do you guys onboard? And Kyle, piggybacking off of what Kyle said, to check this and that, but what are you looking for? How do you know this is the right agent? And then even more importantly, because I like to ask multi-tiered questions, how do you retain them, and what's retention like?
I think that, Kyle's mentioned a couple things that's so important about getting the right agents. In the past, speaking with Kyle, people who have had call center experience is important. Hiring somebody who does not have a predetermined experience in some type of being on the phone in a customer service, an outbound call center, or in sales capacity, and then you're going to bring them into a remote scenario and try to train them into that candidate. It's very difficult. So we found that you have to look, and that's why we went to a remote platform, because the talent base exploded. You can only get to the top talent in a specific region. We are upstate New York. We have a unique area, and it just was the right time for us to expand our growth for the amount of talent that's out there.
Nima, I know that you probably have some comments about this. We've talked about this, and what was interesting, even in particular, listening to companies who have had this challenge, I feel like this may be a push to how we see call center operations moving forward. Do you feel the same way? And what do you have to piggyback off of both Kyle and Mike's comments?
Yeah, look, it's very, very powerful, right? If you can get it to work remotely, you're not only just talking about a nationwide talent pool, you're talking about global, right? And so you have to be committed to making it work, because obviously you have Mike and Kyle that are doing it. You have to have good accountability in place for the agents, right? Like your system should have the ability, for example, for wrap-up time limits, where they need to go from one call to the next and not let them stay in that mode for too long. Have agent productivity logs. How long did they have, were they on pause for on a dialer? Because if there's too much pause going on, agents tend to waste time or not want to get on that next call. And when you want to scale your call center, there's just no way you can manage that process if you have hundreds of agents. Unless you have systems in place that will tell you, or log the agent out and have the ability to pay based on the login time of the dialer, which is their billable hours, right? But having systems in place that will automatically have a checks and balance in terms of their productivity is absolutely key. Otherwise, there's just no way you can manage that process manually. And so as long as you do your due diligence when whatever system it is that you're using that has those capabilities, beyond that, it comes down to having obviously good leads and good management in place, but the agent can hold itself accountable. And the other part I want to mention is with AI technology these days, there's, for example, an integration that we have that will coach and listen to your agents in real time and let them know if they're off script or not, or if they're using the right rebuttals or not. And so if you implement the right systems, you can make it work. But if you're not proactive about it, and you just go back to working from the office once this is all over, I'm telling you, you're missing out on a huge opportunity, huge talent pool to take your call center to the next level.
Kyle and Dave, either one of you, if you could, just follow up with this. I had asked Eric Kozak from American Standard. He runs and operates a call center as well, and I asked, will you keep your operations remote, or will you bring them back to the actual physical together? And one of the questions that he talked about, or one of the statements that he said was that, hey, look, we lose that ability to have that connection when we're not together. Gamification is one of the things that he talked about. And I talked about this in the pre-call about it, and you guys had a response to that you can do this stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of things that you can do in a remote environment that helps with, almost call it team bonding, teamwork, kind of, competition. We do a lot of, we have an internal almost social media platform that allows us to run, daily, weekly, monthly competitions. We're always thinking of new ways to get our agents motivated with incentives. And even though you don't have that in-house kind of, seeing sales being won, if you set it up the correct way with a lot of, vocal teammates and visibility, then, it does the trick.
Mike, do you have anything similar?
No, I feel it's, you've had to adapt. You went from, the old model was we walk the aisles. You walk the aisle and you tap the guy on the shoulder, hey, pick up your shoulders. You could see body language, and those things you lost. You did lose that. But what you gained was the ability to be transparent with everyone. What's Johnny doing in the room over there was lost before. Well, he's doing good. Keep doing what you're doing. Now they know exactly what he's doing. And transparency, imitation is the best motivator. Now, when you see somebody who's producing that you maybe think, I'm better than them, it's actually easier to promote or motivate somebody, because as long as you've built confidence in them, they feel they can do it.
Nima, we had a question from the audience, which I think is really one that you probably can field. And basically it says, the question was, it might be easier choosing agents that have good internet speeds and have the right characteristics and qualities. But what happens inevitably, and especially like in COVID time, you've got the kids in the house, they're playing video games that stream, they're eating up that bandwidth and stuff. So how do you deal with, I know you work with hundreds and thousands of clients out there. What's your advice to them?
Yeah, great question. And so I want to say that there are obviously several factors. One that it's a challenge we faced, right? If I'm being honest, at the beginning, a lot of call centers that went remote, it worked out fine, but we ran into some hiccups. And so what we had to do is we really had to focus on stripping down I don't want to say stripping down, that's the wrong word, but we made with the system lighter in the sense of resource intensive wise. Anything we did, we optimized it, tweaked it. So there's a level of control that we had as a dialer company. They need to be able to really optimize the hell out of the dialer to not use as much resources, right? So that A, if your computers are older, it could support it, and B, if your internet connection is not that great, it could still work well and not impact the call quality. So one, we went through that process for a couple of weeks and it helped. But if the agent has a really old computer or the internet is being used by others in streaming services, and there's only so much control you have. So either having a dedicated internet connection, if that's realistic or not, is obviously is a question. Or Chromebooks, there could be a couple $100. A lot of times they do well enough for what the dialer needs to do. There's a specific kind that we would recommend. It's like couple $100s, I believe, and a lot of times it just does the trick. So I would say have that recommendation, and then if possible, try to have some ways to control the bandwidth, like what they're doing. If they're streaming something, it's going to take a bandwidth away. So one, make sure the dial you're using is suited for a remote setup in terms of being lightweight. Two, try to make sure that your internet is not being used by streaming services if possible, as much as possible. And three, try to get Chromebooks. They're lightweight, computers that work well and for the most part do the trick.
And I can add to that, Convoso has a really good kind of system requirement sheet that they'll give you, where it gives you like minimum and suggested. And what we've done is we've actually gone above that for a minimum requirement, just to, if they might have a newer Core i3, we found a lot of times it's just not working. Like, even though it in some cases it does. So being extra careful and kind of over the top with system requirements. And then there's also very little, tips and tricks that Convoso has given us, such as using incognito mode for your window, so there's no cookies and cache, and small things like that have also helped with agents that had a little bit of a slower system.
Mike, do you have anything else to add?
We had to go like a little simple stupid. Everybody gave some great technical ways that they've been tackling it. We had to just like almost go into like a doctor analysis. And 5 questions you asked them every time. Where does it hurt? Have 5 people recently gone on the internet in the last half hour? Did you just recently add any new devices? Like, you kind of almost like when you call with your cell phone being broken, they ask you a bunch of questions. So we learned, are you on Bluetooth? Did you think wireless was going to work today? Every day you talk to, just let's say Mary, and tomorrow she goes Bluetooth because she had a great day. So she wanted to just like go Bluetooth for the day. And it's like, well, the problem showed up once you went Bluetooth. Trying to engage these laughable moments where it's like, I'm watching YouTube, Judge Judy, you went Bluetooth and you're saying it's choppy. So we got that because they add to the problem, but they actually don't even realize what they're doing.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
You obviously also don't want to be on Wi-Fi. I mean, that's the big one, right? Don't be on Wi-Fi. It's a simple one, but it's one of the most crucial pieces of that.
I have had to threaten my daughter with stopping Animal Crossing while I'm on these webinars. I believe Animal Crossing has literally brought down at least one of these things. I want to stay with agent efficiency, but I want to advance the conversation a little bit and move to something that could be technically a little controversial, but I think it's the way that people are doing business today, or at least the way they need to, especially as we talk about the 2.0. I want to get into a little bit of artificial intelligence here. We could talk about it in other stages, but in this particular case, as we're looking at agent efficiency, how is, and Nima, I'm going to give this to you because I know that you have some AI stuff that that you've worked on, and you're bringing it. But how does artificial intelligence in today's 2.0 call center, how is AI playing a role to effectively improve the quality of agents?
So I would say it allows agents to make better decisions, real-time decisions, right? You're talking about an environment where they're making a lot of calls, having a lot of conversations. And so improving the quality of the conversations is one, and compliance-wise, right? There's state guidelines where I believe there's different disclosures you have to give, and there are maybe like 15 to 20 different states where you have to say your name, your company name, your address, and some states have different requirements. And so making sure that they follow that process, the way that AI should come in is by being able to listen in on the call and let them know in real time if they are following, the process, and are they saying the right things, or are they talking too fast? Do they need to slow down? So AI, in terms of quality control, is really going to play a huge role in that regard, for better conversations, more compliant conversations, and just ultimately, increased results in agent performance.
Yeah, and when you think about,
sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when you think about, like, we're talking about call center efficiencies, one of the things, and we're onboarding AI for our agents as well, as when you talk about like quality assurance, the traditional listening to calls, scoring calls, and making sure that they're compliant, they're quality, they're getting through, the qualification questions that you need from, your clients. this is all streamlined with AI, because it's not, you know, a person or managers listening to calls. It's the system's listening to every call, right? So you have statistics on every single call, all of the details, everything that you want to see in calls or don't want to see. It's very scalable. So that's one huge thing that AI will play into remote or in-house call center.
Mike, do you have anything to add to that as it relates to?
I was just saying what Kyle was, that it's basically bringing it to the front. Like, we have an entire team of managers, compliance department, listens to every call, scores every call, goes back, retraining moments, and you're catching it on the front now. So you're literally taking the back of the process and putting it on the front, which would change what those people could do for the organization. Because right now, they're fantastic people, but you are engaged in methodical approaches to specific problems, right? I have to listen to the whole recording. I can't just simply choose when I want to break off, where I feel like, oh, it's all quality. What if the last minute something? So they have to where AI can sense and find the problems or sense the specific things you're searching: speed, inaccuracy, lack of TCPA, and quickly identify and score. So you can.
Yeah, you're becoming.
This is all about quick. Most of these things that sum up is quick, actionable information. You know, when you summarize a lot of these 2.0 movements, such as agent efficiency, manager efficiency, dialer efficiency, I think what the focus and the shift has become is the data is so readily available that now I'm able to make a move where I'm not post Tuesday looking at what Monday's results were. So there's no Tuesday morning quarterback going, I could have saved the game in the game, and it's Tuesday morning, the game's over. That's the old way. You know, you could go and sit down with your team. So not to go down, you know, take too much time on that.
Yeah, it's all about being proactive instead of reactive, which is what a lot of these things will help with.
Are either of you have? I know, Kyle, you are in an active search for that, and working with NEMA with their product as well. Are either of you using any form of AI to monitor and oversee those conversations from a compliance standpoint? How are you actually complying right now from like a TCPA opt-out or a fraudulent I didn't even sign up for this type thing?
Yeah, with us, well, a lot of it starts just pre-call. Like we are hyper focused on compliance before, like especially with data, before it even hits the dialer. So, you know, we try to be as preemptive as possible. But yeah, adding in you know, an AI component, you can kind of add in custom things that you want the AI to hear that would be kind of flagged as non-compliant. So, you know, in real time, hey, that agent, that call, you know, that might be a problem there. So. But yeah, for us, it's really, that's the one thing that, you know, we prepare on the most before anything happens in the call center and the dialer, is making sure that things are compliant.
Before I move off of this, Nima, do you have anything else to add to this? Because I know AI, I mean, since I've worked with you, I know AI has been, you know, an important part of the Convoso platform, and I know it's evolving, and I know that this is probably as much to do with 2.0 call center as anything. And so do you have any last minutes on that before I move on to the lead efficiency?
No, I mean, I think the bottom line is that you need to have AI incorporated one way or another if you want to go remote and grow it and scale it for compliance purposes, if nothing else, right? And so it's also as good as you train it. So at the end of the day, AI it's not a human being. So what's important to note about AI, it's always understanding what do you want out of it and working with the system to do what you want it to do, whether it's for compliance or performance purposes, whatever it might be.
James Chavez just asked what AI programs are there out there, and does Convoso support that? And I think that, you know, that's what you're saying is that AI, Convoso does have an AI component to it. It's growing. It's something that's evolving over time, but certainly addressing these things we're talking about.
Well, it's an integration that we have that we're working on right now that will provide the information that we're talking about. We have a virtual agent that's a little bit different AI. It will, you know, pre-qualify your leads, but what we're referring to here is the AI that will coach your agents and listen to them for compliance purposes. And so that's the integration that we're currently working on, and we're going through some final stages before we want to announce it. But that's where we're at with it. So if you want to get with me afterwards, happy to share more about that.
Looks like the webinar today had a scoop on Convoso's new AI product. So I'm super excited to bring that news to everybody out there.
More to come.
Right, more to come. I'm going to shift now and go over to the lead efficiency, because it's one thing that the agent has this tool or that tool, or we manage them this way or that way, but the lead plays a big role into this, and so the efficiency of that lead, I think, is important. Before we kick off into any of the specifics, there was a question from somebody that is from an agency, and the question was that basically says, how do you see the role in an agency increasing the quality of the leads? Is it implementing new IVRs, et cetera, things of that nature? Out of the three of you, what would you say to those people who you're buying leads or acquiring leads from, that they could do the single best, or one or two things that they would definitely be able to benefit from in providing leads to you guys? Mike, do you want to kick off that?
So you said IVR, right? Did you mention that term?
That was a particular instance of what they were talking about as it relates to Michelle was asking. Do you implement a better IVR? Do you implement some other upflow upstream process? But in general, as you work those leads that you get, obviously you have lead providers that you like, you have lead providers that you tolerate, you have lead providers that you've probably kicked out of the ecosystem. And so as that world that you evolve from, what have you seen works? What do you like to see? What are some of those things that, if you had the ideal lead provider, that you would ask out of them?
I think that the biggest thing that you'll hear everybody say is compliance, which means that I would want someone who was had a valid interest in putting the information, that it came from a reliably sourced website that's not built in a funnel, not specific to what they're looking for. So there's a slippery slope out there, all right? And I can click on orange juice and all of a sudden I want vodka. And I simply went for orange juice. So we want the client who went solar centric in our vertical, okay? I'm speaking specific to myself. We want a client who was looking for something in solar. They want talk about energy efficiency. They might be open to doing some home improvements or tree trim. So it's not somebody who's like, I will never, because in the vertical where I work, there's capacities that I just want to make sure are beyond that threshold before I call them. And likewise, you mentioned early on, I never want to call somebody who goes, who are you? Why are you calling? Where did you get my number? Because that's the worst thing you ever hear in our business, because my data is sourced, reliable, opt-in only, Jornaya lead ID, like everything Kyle will do. It's like lock and key, bundled in a box, put in a puzzle, so that when somebody tries to unwind it, it's like, no, I didn't just buy this. And that is where we've all gone. We've gone through lead bundlers, and now it's sourced reliable feed.
And
I don't speak for everybody, but that's where we've.
To add on to that, like same thing, our ideal lead is just intent. Like the consumer has intent of the product or industry that you're selling. So one thing that people lead generators are often scared to do is, for example, add more questions to a form that would get you a really high intent user. They're like, oh, well, the conversion is going to go down of someone going onto the page and filling out the form, right? But I would rather that conversion go down, spend a little bit more, because these are people that want your product. So for us, it's all about having high intent users, not just pure volume.
Volume
go ahead,
quality
Mike, sorry.
is what he just gave the balance, volume versus quality.
Yeah.
Quality, quantity. It's an age-old problem, right?
Right.
And I do know that the industry continually evolves around it, but I do believe that technology is going to have to play a bigger role in improving quality while not focusing specifically on quantity. Nima, this is your show right now, and one of the three things that we talk about is agent leads and management. And so as it relates to leads, what is it that you want to make sure people understand as it relates to what you want to put out?
Yeah, I mean, I think, from an agency perspective, right, one of the things, let's just say, talking about this topic, but in general, sometimes it's not your quality of leads that will have an impact. It's what is their dialing strategy? How are they working those leads? How are they recycling to those leads? You need to ask them those questions, because what you come to find is most people's dialers are not set up effectively to convert your leads. They're just dialing and dialing and dialing. So you need to look at, after what call count does the call keep going to voicemail, because at some point you want to stop calling that lead. And so those are questions you want to ask when you're generating those leads, to find out what the dialing strategy is, because you'll find that the contact rate does not improve after certain call attempt. Now, that doesn't mean that you should stop calling it altogether, but you need to have automation in place that will move that lead into another list, and maybe call it back again in 30 days from now, and try again at that point, and maybe then again in 60 days from now. But the biggest thing about lead efficiency is you need to look at your reporting to really understand what percentage of those leads pick up, how many of them are, transferred, and what is the revenue out of those leads. But you need to have real-time reporting that gives you that data, so you can see on an hourly basis which agents are producing how much revenue, what is the actual ROI on it, meaning what was the cost to convert those leads. The agent's time is a hard cost, right? You're paying them. The cost of the dialer is a hard cost. And so you need to be able to break that down on a lead source level to tell you specifically what the ROI is on an hourly basis by agent, by lead source. And if you do that, you'll be able to quickly optimize your call center. And as someone that's generating leads and selling them, those are the kinds of questions you want to ask. How are you measuring the conversion rate of these leads? What systems and reporting do you have in place?
And here's the beautiful thing is, if you get the good balance between, like redialing strategy is huge. We spend a lot of time finding out the correct redial strategy schedule, making sure that you have, good lead providers. As you continue to do these optimizations, and Michael's not going to like this, you can actually scale back your lead buying, because your contact rates are going up so much that you're able to convert just as many, if not more, sales with less leads, right? So if we're talking about call center profitability, I mean, leads is one of the biggest spenders of a call center. So being able to grow your agent force in numbers wise, but scale back your lead purchasing, be like, what? Well, if you really nail down your dialing strategy and your sources and your state routing, that's like, you can actually spend more money or less money and make more money, which is great.
I wanted to get to Michael to respond, but Nima's having a hemorrhage over there. Go ahead and answer.
Sorry, but it's music. It is music to my ears. But if more call centers had that understanding mentality, that stop buying so many leads. They always say, we want to buy more and more and more leads. Guess what? You hit the wall. You can't catch up with the new leads. Now those get stuck, and you're just dialing the old ones. I mean, it's just a big mess. You really have to shift the mentality. It drives us crazy. Like, I don't know how many times we have to explain a customer that comes on board with us. We had them. They're like, hey, why are our leads not being dialed enough? And we see, guess what? There are 10,000 new leads that are coming in when the system is still catching up on those leads. And that mentality is very difficult for a call center who's traditionally been used to getting leads coming in to change and understand, let's look at what we really need to be successful and profitable, because nobody ever said, don't give me more leads. Never, ever, right? But you really have to shift your mindset if you want to do things right. And leads cost, it's one of your biggest expenses. It's at the end of the day.
I will tell you what, it may take a second to get Nima fired up, but you just saw a little bit of that. So I'm super excited. Keep questions coming, because I want that passion to come out. Mike, look, Kyle called you out, said, I don't think Mike's going to like what I'm about to say. What's going on in your head now?
I was the first one who, when they walked by my office and whispered, they didn't want to tell me they were cutting the leads, because they knew I stayed up like, you're taking my food away. Like it's like my kids are in traffic and you pushed them there. I instantly just cringe, like when you tell me you're going to cut my fuel source, right? But it took me weeks of understanding the new. Like, I even wrote this down because it's so different than the way we used to do it. Like, the 1.0 model was literally shovel leads in, beat them to death, call the new leads 12 times and then give me more. Just, I killed them, they're dead, give me more. And it never valued longevity. And that goes into a dual role. Value in the longevity and lead efficiency does value what your agents are doing with that lead. And they've converged, they've met. And you used to measure them separately, and that is where 2.0 is. You're measuring the data, your agent's rest time, your live contact rates, and it's really allowing you to do less with more, or excuse me, more with less, because your contact rates increase so much that you don't actually need, and actually it becomes a detriment if you buy too much new.
Yeah.
Now your cost comes in, but you didn't convert on that cost because it was catching up on the value of what you created in your first. We kind of look at it in waves, so it's a wave of contact, and they mesh together. But if you buy too much data, it becomes where people will be calling saying, I have so much new data I can't get to. That's because it's so efficient, utilizing what you bought in the first wave. You overfed coal in, it's not going anywhere. And I had to learn that. And I think Kyle's, I was an old model. Give me more, give me more. Don't ever tell me no. No chicken nuggets.
Hey, you guys are solar. You should hate shoveling in coal. It's like,
oh my gosh, he brought it there.
The days you have too much new data is just as bad as, oh my God, all we have is old data, because it values both. You can't have one without the other. And I've learned a much better, more manageable approach for the company based on data usage, data cost, and modeling for what we used to do in a week or in a month. And we've reduced our outbound cost on data a quantity of a quarter, so 25%.
Yeah.
And that just, it happened because it had to happen, not because I wanted it to happen. We did no longer need it. And that was just the proof. It was not, we made the choice, we cut it, and they said, deal with it. You just didn't need it anymore. We were watching.
Yeah.
We had many changes and saw that we're spiking. We're not getting to all the data we're using. Our analytics department was running out with fire. And you know what? This is money leaving my department you're not even using, because he's held to his budget.
Well, and it's all about agent happiness, right? And so if you are setting up your dialer correctly and their contact rates are through the roof and they're getting to talk to more people per day and make more sales, they're going to be stoked. So that's, the bottom line is you're going to want to do that not only for cost, but for agent efficiency too.
Before I move on to the next direction that I wanted to take this, which is back to compliance, because that's my home space. There was a question that said, like, pay for duration, pay for lead, pay for sale, performance marketing. What's the future of lead provisioning and lead selling and buying in your eyes as it relates to more effective, more quality versus quantity? Is there any of those that I just mentioned, or all of those? Where do you see the market going for that? Either one?
Yeah, I mean, in the call space, like, a big thing is working on durations, and it's just because of that. You're making sure that the transfers or the calls are of quality. I don't know, Mike, if you have anything else to add to that.
I think you have both. You have duration and rev share, right? So you have something that says I'll share in the sale, and you have the other that says if it's 2 minutes or less, don't worry about it. I don't consider that quality. Both of them require management. Both of them require hands-on to follow up on that experience. We've tried numerous ones. I can't say that either one we've done long-term.
Michael, I just posted a question for you from the audience. Jesse asked, while Michael was talking about his idea about cutting on leads, it brought up the issue I always find myself running into, which is in a fast-paced business where you constantly have new leads, at some point, some managements would get the wrong idea while analyzing the data as a positive impact was from the old patch of data, not the new one. I've tried to separate these patches as much as I can to get a clearer vision, but I'm interested, is there a trick that's easier to do?
I'll speak from my experience. We have a data analyst on staff, so it's easy for me to say, hey man, give me the best data or the conversion from Monday to Wednesday on this source. So I don't know if that's answering the question, but it seems like I can, and I have the ability to kind of separate a tranche of data, even though it might be mixed. He's really, really passionate with his ability to go into the data and really just find what we need. So I might be on the lucky side of that. I don't know about Kyle.
Well, and yeah, and I mean, we use tons of Convosa reports for data, and as long as you like organize and separate your lists and your providers and real time and all that and inbound and all that stuff, you have all the reporting that you need, right? You have the contact rate by list, you can do it by date, you have the conversion, of transfer of sale, you have average duration of the call, abandon rate, all that stuff by list, by date. So we have so many different lead sources that we have coming in every day, so it's imperative that we have it set up or organized, and we use those reports to ensure that we're not spending money on data that's not working, or we're reallocating to the ones, wow, past month they're absolutely killing contact rates and conversion. So as long as you have a system that has that, like Convosa, that has that reporting capabilities, it's easy. We don't even need an analytics team.
I want to quickly move on to what I had said earlier, compliance. There's a lot of activity right now that impacts the quality of that lead from a compliance standpoint. Some of it you talked about, whether it's Active Prospect or Jornaya, who is doing third-party lead verification. You guys indicated that you're doing that. There are a couple of other things impacting the industry as it relates to call center fraudulent submissions of forms. The people who you get on the phone and you hear that dreaded, I did not sign up, which is impacting even TCPA today, because if they did not fill out the form, or they were not the ones filling out the form, or in particular lately, if they were not the owner of the phone number that they submitted the form with, you possibly could be looking at a TCPA violation. On the flip side, we also have other movement as it relates to call center technology or call center activity, and that is in the stir shaken side of things. We are now seeing the telco companies being forced by the FCC to block some of these calls. Nima, I'll kick it off with you, because I know that this is an area that you're passionate about, and then Kyle and Dave, I'd like you respectively to answer. But basically, what are we doing today for this? How is this being addressed?
So yeah, this is a really big deal. The Trace Act, right, was signed into law at the end of last year.
Do you know what that stands for, Nima Hakimi?
I was about to say, let's see if I can get it back again.
I want to trace unless I have it.
I do know, actually. You know what? I am going to say it. It's a Telephone Robocall Abuse Criminal Enforcement and Deterrence Act. Point is, it has the word criminal in there, which is a pretty big deal.
CE, criminal enforcement. Listen to those two.
Trump signed this, right? He signed this act. Yes. And a big part of it, of course, is the fine of $10,000 per call that the FCC can enforce, and criminal and all sorts of things. The other side of it is stir shaken, that the telco carriers are being mandated to implement that by June of 2021. And what it is basically caller ID authentication, which helps the telecom carriers detect the legitimacy of a caller through a token. So basically, you cannot spoof your caller ID. In the big picture, that is actually a good thing, right? Because the bad actors are the ones that are typically spoofing the caller IDs and using caller IDs that are not valid, so you cannot get back to them. So my prediction is, once that goes into place, call volumes will go down considerably. The businesses that are doing it legitimately will thrive. But the other part that's been really interesting is that the U.S. Telecom Association, which I'm not sure how many people are familiar with, but they have, it's an association with all the telco carriers. They have a group that's called the Traceback Group, and their job is to monitor calls across all these carriers and report that information now to where, if they feel like calls are being placed that are not compliant, they will reach out and ask for information to see if it's legitimate or not. And so there's a lot of pressure that's being put on. The FCC is really going to start regulating these things, and you really just ultimately want to make sure that you're not spoofing your call ID and you're not bombarding, calling your leads a million times. You're going to, it's a lot of trouble. Beyond headaches beyond people being pissed off, you don't want to mess with the government. You just don't want them to be on your ass.
Kyle?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Did you have
like
more,
you said,
Nima? I'm sorry if I shut you down there.
that's it.
yeah, I mean, if you, like you said, if you know, we're one of the good guys, I'd like to think, but you know, there's a couple things that we do. We scrub our leads vigorously before, just for any, you know, fraud or whatever it may be. And then, you know, within Convoso, there's a lot of great things such as, you know, automatic DID reputation check, so you're not having to worry about, you know, your DIDs becoming potential spam likely. And then like regulating your redials, you know, not hammering one number, you know, 30 times in a day, maybe 8 times max over a course of whatever 3 weeks, and the moves to the trash bucket after that. So if you just do those little, if you're doing things correctly, you know, not spoofing, then you should be good to go. But there's little things that you can do to continuously, you know, armor yourself to make sure that you're of the highest quality in calls.
Mike?
No, I believe that it all comes down to your recycle methodology, like how many times you're willing to call a particular, you know, lead set in a specific day. Kyle mentioned before there's a lead penetration report, so you can see what you might be calling too often in that day. And it happens sometimes when you might be calling a region where there's a limited or small pool of data. You didn't mean or intentionally do it, but that data spools faster than the other region that has more data to feed it. So it's just to give you an alert mechanism that something might not be of the best efficiency for you that day. It's not going to convert your calling.
We only have about 7 or 8 minutes left here before we stop, and so I want to cram a few things in, and so, you know, condense the answers so that we can get more of this out to people. Nima, you brought up something that was really interesting to me. You talked about voicemails. You talked about, you know, a dialer or technology doesn't necessarily, from an agent standpoint, understand that they're talking the voicemails, and so therefore can actually end up being a negative impact on the agent. Is this correct?
Yeah, so you're talking about the false positives. What happens is with dialer technology, there is voicemail detection, and it's not 100% accurate, meaning there is going to be 10, 15%, depending on how good your answering machine detection is, of calls that leak through that are voicemails. And so you want to make sure that, again, if you see a lead going to voicemail more than a certain number of times, you stop calling that, because that false positive will continue to leak through the agent. Now, I'm not saying stop calling it, but you need to look at the data, and if you continuously get a voicemail, stop calling that lead, and your system should have the ability to automatically make those adjustments and changes and move the lead to another list if it hits a voicemail more than X number of times, because you're just going to burn the agent out. They hate getting voicemails. It kills their productivity and their momentum.
Oh yeah.
Kyle, Dave, Kyle, Mike.
They'll come to me every time they get voicemails that come through, and they'll ask me if I made a change, you know, and toggle off of the auto machine, you know, the answer machine detection settings that are set for us. But we have ventured down the path, because like when I get a new toy, I played with every switch in this thing. Like when I turned on Convoso, I intentionally flick things I shouldn't have, just to say, what did that do? So I knew. And well, a lot of answer machines in a specific.
Is there a difference between ringless voicemail and personalized voicemail?
I think what you're referring to is the voicemail drops. I believe ringless voicemail is not a great strategy, but you're referring to being able to drop voicemails on calls that go to a voicemail and being able to leave a message. If you're going to do that, you want to leave personalized messages, meaning don't leave the same message, or don't even leave a message on every single voicemail attempt, right? So if you get a voicemail, leave one kind of message, and then have the ability that maybe on the 4th time that you get a voicemail, leave a different kind of message. So you need to have the ability to personalize it that way if you want to take advantage of voicemails, which is an effective way of getting callbacks if you use that strategy, where in an automated way, you'll place voicemail messages and different ones depending on which attempt it was.
Michael, I'm going to start with you on this final question. We've evolved now and only allowed 5 more minutes to talk about this, but I think we've put this in along the way as we talked about both agent and lead efficiency. How do, from a management perspective, this is your gig, you manage this stuff, how do you take the tools and technologies that you have, the Jornayas, the Active Prospect, the Convosos, and what do you effectively take from that to manage more effectively? And then how do you communicate that back upstream to those decision makers who have employed you to do your job?
Honestly, this is the most exciting part of like the talk for me, because all of those things that we talked about were definitely parts of what I do. But as a manager, you're trying to work in all those pieces of the puzzle, you know? So Convoso's given me the option to be more of a forward thinker. Like, they've taken simple processes that I used to have to do manually on my own, and they've allowed you to create automated systemization. So every day, my leads come in a feed, but the next day, those leads are dispersed to equalized lists in state-specific areas, broken down, already ready for my attack. From there, there are additional systems that say once it gets to a certain call count, it puts it away, and it puts it into the archive, and then it comes back after 30 days. These things are literally meteoric launches. Like, people who have run on Vici or something that they don't even understand. When I say this to them, they think that we have some side computer system that does this. And Convoso's really given me that new perspective where you're a pre-planner. You're down and you're able to really do the things that are making your day for your fulfillment and sales more powerful, instead of doing the mediocre tasks of just trying to keep the system running.
Yeah.
Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, it's about, you know, you have so many tools available now, so you can't say, well, we've always done it this way, right? Like, even going remote, like, we've always been in house, we can't do it. You can, and there's the tools that you can use to do it, and it's all about, he's right, automation that leads to efficiency, that leads to profitability, right? So, I mean, even down to, we've been talking about reporting, which can often be a very like time-consuming thing, but you know, Convoso has the ability where it can email the report, you know, at each quarter of the day. You don't even have to go in there. You know how the list is doing and the agents is doing, and you know, wow, this agent has, you know, taken a bathroom break 50 times, and everyone else has done too. So maybe there's some agent inefficiency there. So everything's automated in Convoso, and so like I said before, you're thinking proactively rather than reactively. So it's just been huge for our call center, and as we continue to scale, because it's all about scalability.
Well, I'm going to wrap this up, and Kyle and Michael, I can't thank you guys enough for spending the time. I know that you have an important job, and any time away from that is important. And so it's been really exciting. I've had several comments, actually. Great session, learned a lot. So this is real-time feedback that we're getting right now, that people have enjoyed this. Before I switch back to Nima one last time, how can we get a hold of you guys? I know that you've agreed to answer questions. Michael, what's the best way? I can't find you on LinkedIn, so tell me.
I can be emailed. My best email, you can use my initials, MKV, and then that's at resourcemarketingcorp.com.
Awesome.
If you wanted to text me, I'd be willing to give my phone number out as well.
Let's not do that. Who knows where this will end up. Kyle, for you.
Yeah,
he disappeared.
I'm active on LinkedIn. So if you haven't and want to message, yeah.
I told my daughter Animal Crossing could start at the top of the hour. I think her clock is off. Kyle, your feed is a little bit suspect, but his LinkedIn profile, he's easily found, Kyle Anderson. And so we'll try to push that out. Nima, I want to push back to you in the last couple of minutes that we have. You guys have a challenge going on. Sign up with Convoso and what? How does that work?
Yeah, so it's all about contact rate, right? Not beating your leads to death. So we're saying that we will beat your contact rate and boost it by at least 30%, or we'll give you $1,000. And bottom line is, we're very confident that with the right technology and the right partner, you can do things in a profitable manner remotely. We've done it for many, and so we really want to put that out there and put our money where our mouth is.
Well, the $1,000 piques my interest. I'm going to go. I have 2 phones. Does that constitute? just trying to go.
I have one last thing. One other thing is, we have a webinar on the 22nd of July. It's in regards to Stir Shaken and with Michelle Schuster. You guys don't want to miss this. It's a lot of good content. It's always great having her. So that's on the 22nd of July, and you can find more information on our website.
I love Michelle Schuster. She is so knowledgeable, especially about stir shake, and that is her specialty, so I can't wait to it. Guys, this is another example of our weekly content. We put something out relevant to the industry every week. The council is doing their best to be a hub of activity for the industry. If you go to leadscouncil.org, go to our resource hub tab. We have our events hub, which shows all of these, both the past webinars and future webinars that we have. We're adding them every week. The recordings can be downloaded there, especially this one. Once I get it recorded or edited down, I'll make sure that it's up and running. We also have our news hub, which showcases some of the top news in the week. We also have our job board hub, which showcases any openings in the industry today. We also have a special over the summer. We have dropped our silver membership down from for $2,000 a year to $500 a year, or $42 a month. There's absolutely no reason not to join the council at this point. That could have been a double negative. I have no idea. I'll see it once I record and play it. Guys,
oh, wait, there's more.
There's more Ginsu knives if you order in the next 5 minutes. Guys, thank you very much. This has been a pleasure for me, and I can't wait to get this up and running. A lot of people will benefit from this. We'll talk later.
Thank you.
Okay.